All right, let's jump straight into a pretty wild story. We're going to talk about the rise and then the incredible fall of Japan's snow leisure empire. And to really get a handle on just how big this thing was, we have to start right at the very top, at its absolute peak. And trust me, the numbers are just mind-blowing. So picture this. The year is 1993. This number, 17.7 million, that's how many people in Japan were skiing. I mean, just let that sink in. That works out to almost 1 out of every 7 people in the entire country. We're talking babies, grandmas, everyone. It was staggering. The mountains weren't just mountains anymore. They were basically bustling cities that popped up every single winter. And then there's the money. At its peak, the whole ski scene was worth about 1 trillion yen a year. And that wasn't just for lift tickets. We're talking about everything. The gear, the flashy ski fashion, the travel, the hotels, the whole shebang. A massive economy just built around the snow. It was a total powerhouse. Okay, but this number? This might be the craziest one of all. 90 minutes. Can you guess what that is? That was the wait time for a single ski lift on a weekend. Seriously, 90 minutes. Not for some theme park ride, but to get on a chairlift to go up a mountain. It just tells you everything you need to know about how unbelievably packed those mountains were. So you have to be asking, how did this even happen? How did skiing go from a kind of niche hobby to this massive national obsession? Well, to figure that out, we gotta go back a bit to see how it all started. So yeah, the whole thing didn't just happen overnight. The roots go way back to the 50s. But the real game changers? 2 Olympic Games. First, you've got the Tokyo Olympics in '64. That wasn't even a Winter Games, but it led to this huge infrastructure push. New highways, new train lines that suddenly made getting to the mountains way easier. Then, bam, the Sapporo Winter Olympics in '72. That's what really lit the fuse. Suddenly skiing was on TV everywhere, and a national craze was born. So you had the access, and now you had the desire. The stage was perfectly set for what came next. Okay, let's fast forward to the 80s. This is where it all goes into hyperdrive. Japan's famous bubble economy was booming, and when all that money collided with the ski craze, well, it became more than a sport. It became a whole cultural phenomenon. And this chart just shows you the insane speed of it all. I mean, look at that. You see the steady climb, and then boom, ignition. The number of skiers more than doubles in just about a decade. That kind of growth is it's hard to even wrap your head around. And yeah, this wasn't just some natural organic growth. No way. This was a full-on, debt-fueled gold rush. A law passed in '87 basically gave companies a blank check to go build massive resorts. Billions and billions of yen got poured into these projects. And at the same time, new bullet trains and highways were like these giant arteries, just pumping millions of people straight from the cities to the slopes. Which brings us to the early 90s, the absolute peak of the empire. At this point, the industry wasn't just big, it was colossal. It basically dominated the entire leisure culture of the country. Now, this is what I find so fascinating. People would say this all the time. We spent more time waiting than actually skiing. But here's the kicker, it wasn't a complaint. It was just a statement of fact. It showed you were there, you were part of the scene. The crazy crowds, the long lines, that was the experience. It was about being in the middle of this massive, energetic movement. So yeah, you put it all together, almost 700 resorts, a trillion yen market, nearly 18 million skiers. There's no question about it. Japan was the absolute center of the skiing universe, a true snow leisure empire, built on a mountain of bubble-era cash and just pure unadulterated hype. But as you probably guessed, what goes up must come down. And just as fast as this empire was built, it started to crumble. And what's really wild is how the very things that created the boom were the same things that would tear it all down. And I mean, just look at these numbers. The drop-off is just as staggering as the rise. We go from that crazy peak of 17.7 million skiers, and then the numbers just fall off a cliff. We're talking a nearly 70% drop. The crowds didn't just thin out, they've vanished. It's like a ghost town. Putting the two eras side by side like this is, well, it's pretty stark. That 90-minute lift line, the one that was like a badge of honor, gone. And not because things got more efficient. It was gone because the people were gone. The silence replaced the buzz. All that energy just evaporated, leaving these huge, empty resorts behind, kind of like echoes of what they used to be.
So, what in the world happened? Well, it really was a perfect storm. It wasn't just one thing. First, the economic bubble burst, and poof, there goes everyone's extra cash. Then, you've got demographics, fewer young people. Add in climate change, making winters warmer and less snowy. And on top of all that, skiing just stopped being the cool thing to do. The empire was basically being hit from every possible direction at once.
But is that the end of the story? A complete wipeout? Well, not exactly. As the dust started to settle on all these abandoned resorts, something new, something different started to bubble up. Not everywhere, mind you, but in a few specific places. A whole new kind of energy. And that brings us to today, and a potential new chapter. A new light, you could say, starting to glow in the ruins of that old empire. Let's talk about the inbound tourism boom. So if you look at a place like Niseko, you see this completely different picture. An absolute flood of international tourists are coming in, hunting for that legendary Japanese powder snow, Japao. Suddenly, in some hotels, over half the guests are from overseas. And here's the thing, they spend way more money, and they're packing the hotels right to the brim, hitting 80–90% occupancy. The source material has a great term for this. A localized light. And that's exactly what it is. It's not a revival of the old days, not at all. This is a totally new game. It's not fueled by a domestic craze, but by a global audience that knows Japan has some of the best snow on the planet. It's a much smaller fire, for sure, but maybe, just maybe, it's a more sustainable one. So here's the main takeaway, the thing to really chew on. The great snow leisure empire? Yeah, it's fallen. No doubt about it. But the story's not over. There's still breath left in it. The snow is stirring again. But this time, it's not with the roar of a massive domestic boom. It's more like a whisper, carried on the wind to a global community of skiers. The empire is gone, but it leaves us with a really interesting question. What's going to rise up to take its place?